Hello, I'm Delaney Ruston, physician and the creator of the 3 Screenagers movies, and this is the Screenagers podcast. Well, there's lots of talk about cyberbullying and social cruelty that happens via social media. There's another huge arena where this also happens that's been largely overlooked, and that's video gaming. For years, I've heard from kids and teens about the aggressive exchanges, the slurs, the harsh language that happens among peers while playing video games. Even in games like Minecraft, players will taunt and insult each other. Owen is 19 and has been playing video games since he was a kid.
There's kind of like the feeling of you're hiding behind the screen so you can say whatever you want to say, really, and there won't be too many real-world consequences, I guess. People don't realize that it leaves the same kind of like damage on an individual as it would if you were being mean to them in person.
Owen says trash talking is just part of gaming culture, and things can get really ugly.
People definitely take it too far, to the point where it's just pure hate, not even like little arguments and like friendly banter.
In my medical practice, I raise this topic with my tween and teen patients who play a lot of video games. When I ask them if they are experiencing aggressive words and bullying, they all nod a big yes. We talk about how to navigate this and do they have an adult they can turn to about it. Today, I'm doing an episode on this topic. When kids are mean behind their screen, video gaming screens I'm talking about. And I'm really happy that my guest is Kishonna Gray, who is an assistant professor in digital studies at the University of Kentucky, who for many years has been researching the human dynamics that occur during video gaming.
I study the people who are inside the spaces. I study the industry that constitutes the space, but I also make sense of how all those things impact culture and how culture is impacting it.
Thank you, Kishonna. Let me start with, what are some of the ways that kids and teens on these different platforms are communicating when it gets to be aggressive or mean? What kind of language comes up?
So, all right, I'm going to say something. It might be pretty shocking to the core. The basic ways of speaking inside a lot of these spaces is mean language. Trash talking is a thing. The toxic language is a thing. So a lot of the F word, the homophobic like language, they're using the R word, and then the racist words, they're calling each other the N word. They're using a very sexist language. Now, I know a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting my kids out of there. Hold on, parents, slow down, okay? It's sad, but we've normalized that trash talking is the go-to ways of engaging.
There are many offensive words happening, and Kishonna makes the point that this isn't confined to things like aggressive first-person shooter games, such as Call of Duty. So let's step back for a minute and talk about the popular video games that kids and teens are playing these days.
The games that kids are playing now. All right. So once they figure out what platform they're on. So platform is like if they're playing on PC or if they're playing on Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, or phones are right in there too. Mobile gaming is huge among young folks as well. So a lot of these kids are finding the free games. Games like Minecraft, Roblox, Rec Room, CSGO, Counter-Strike Go. Of course, Lego games are a pretty big platform. Some of the shooter games. They're playing Call of Duty, they're playing Apex, they're playing Fortnite. Fortnite's really popular among the kids. And then a lot of kids are playing sports games. They're playing NBA 2K, they're playing Madden.
In fact, just in clinic the other day, I asked the 13-year-old what game he was playing, because he was doing a sports physical to be starting football, and he plays the football game.
I love that. The problem is that culturally, young folks, I'm not just going to put this on young folks, gamers in general have attached and associated so much to the accessories in the game. When you can accessorize, when you put the skins on, the weapons that you might have, all those extras, you got to pay for them.
When you mention skin, does that also equate to an outfit? But it's just the wording used
it's
is
all
skin?
outfit. Thank you for asking that clarifying question, Delaney. When I say skin, I just mean the outfit that your character is putting on. The skins are all cosmetic, right? But those are the things that really matter, to these young folks. Do you have the best hat, the coolest jacket, or it's so many things that you can customize inside the space. And the kids really just want to know, like, do they have the latest thing? Like in Fortnite, the game gives you some basic default characters. Now, they're not flashy. They're not LeBron James or Taylor Swift. They don't look like shiny like those lovely humans like at all, right? So what you have to do, you either have to grind, so they have to work hard to get access to like the skins, the different customizations, or you could pay for them. So in actual dollars, in US dollars, that can be anywhere from like $5 to $20. And that's just for one skin. Now, something that a game like Fortnite does, it's really bad. Fortnite has new customizations like every week. And so these kids, and think about the pressure to have to keep up with all of that. And so what's happening is that a lot of kids who have the resources, they're paying for these things. And so we have attached like a status to like, if you have that LeBron James skin, that means that you're good at the game. And so many of them, they feel like that they're left behind if they can't pay for those skins and pay for those upgrades and pay for those customizations. And then they get bullied. And then they'll go to school and their friends are talking about, yeah, I had this skin. Did you get that skin? And if they didn't have that skin, then, they're not able to like, kind of compete in the social sphere that's associated with like games. And the fact that a lot of these young folks are playing their game on mobile devices, they are playing all day long. Even while they're in school, they're sitting there with their phones. They're playing the game all day.
Call of Duty, even?
Call of Duty, even. Call of Duty Mobile is one of the biggest communities. Yes, they're in there all day long. So there have even been like some harms, happen where kids, were getting bullied behind it. They're being isolated in school because of it. And so our, parents need to be aware of this, but also like the schools need to be aware of like the language as well, which is why, I love developing the relationships with like the schools, but they have to develop like this extra language and knowledge to help the young folks like make sense of it, especially socioeconomically disadvantaged kids who aren't able to like take advantage of like all those kinds of things. Because sometimes those games are everything. In the sports world in 2K, having the latest drip is everything.
What is that?
Drip. They can be swagged out. They have like these nice outfits, the nice hairstyles. Listen, some of these kids, they have like their full body tatted. They have chains on, they have gold teeth in. And so like they're dripped out, they're swagged out. But if they're not, they could get made fun of.
When you pay money to get skins, if you're in 7th, 8th grade, do the peers know how you got your skin or do they not know?
If the new skin just came out and all the young folks have it, that means they paid for it.
Because they wouldn't have had enough time.
That's right. They wouldn't have had enough time to grind, like to get it. And so what was happening, there's some pushback. So some young folks are like, hey, if you paid for it, you're not a real gamer. And so there are all kinds of interesting.
Oh my gosh. So you are in trouble if you do and in trouble if you don't.
That's right, Delaney. They can't win.
So what percentage of time are there on Call of Duty that they're on headphones with complete strangers?
Those days are mostly over. This younger generation, they usually never play with people that they don't know. They coordinate, hey, I'm going to be home from school at 4:00. Let's get on. Let's go play, Call of Duty. Let's play CSGO. Let's play Fortnite. Let's play Minecraft. And so they're using Discord all day long, mind you. They're talking while they're in school, and then they're coordinating. And so rarely are these young folks even interacting like with a stranger online. A lot of families don't realize that. You have to have an invitation to come inside that Discord space. So there's some safety associated like with that Discord space, right? In the other gaming space, so for instance, like on PlayStation or Xbox, we can create our private spaces, our private parties, our private chats, and we just invite people that we know. So less and less and less is the connections that we make online with perfect strangers. I'm an older millennial, that wasn't the case whenever the games went online for us. We didn't know anybody.
It's great news that young people are far less likely to play with strangers than in the past. But of course, it still can happen, and we need to continue to talk with our kids about this. Kishonna works with parents and youth to help them navigate the hard parts of video game culture, the pressure to buy skins, the cyberbullying, the toxic language. So I asked her to share some helpful strategies to open up communication with our kids about these realities.
First off, what's important is to game with your kids. Most parents won't do that. I don't know why. But I'm like, play with your kids. And my kids have always allowed me like inside their spaces. Now I give them privacy when they're like with their little girlfriends and stuff. Like I know when to leave, but I know their core group enough because I was in there when they were 7 and 8 and 9. And so they've grown up with this same core group. So I know who they all are.
I know for me personally, I wish I had spent time playing video games with my kids. I played Wii a couple of times and tried Mario Kart, but I was awful at it. Here's Kishonna again with more advice.
What I encourage parents to do is to know their friends' gamer tags, their usernames, to know who your kids are talking to. So one of the things that I do, I'll just go in and I ask them, can I game with you? So let's say, for instance, somebody had a gamer tag and I would say something like, oh, that's a cool gamer tag. What does that mean? And that gets them talking about their friend as opposed to me saying, who is that? Who is that? Who is that?
Explain what a gamer tag is.
So every person who is inside a game, inside any of these platforms, you have an identifier. You create your name that identifies you inside these games. That's called a gamer tag or a username inside these spaces. Most people do not use their own names. It's like an alias, it's like your alter ego, this persona that you create when you're going inside gaming. Some people, they take it seriously, like what they create. Some people it's just silly things. So your identity is protected until you decide to disclose more information about yourself.
What a brilliant idea you're suggesting is that a parent say, look, I want to play a little bit with you, or let me just look over your shoulder. And the parent could write down some of the usernames.
Yeah. Write it down, write them all down.
Write them down. And then at dinner another time, like these were fascinating. Like, first of all, I'm just curious, how did you pick yours? And the parent could even start another great inroad would be something like, I'm thinking I want to play. And these are my 3 top username I came up with. How dorky do these sound, or do you like any of these?
That's great. That's beautiful advice. Absolutely. There was a parent who shared they are in the game with their kids, but their kids don't know. And so they have there's this person that's in there and they're like, who is this person? They keep kicking them out, but it's somebody's dad, So the dad was kind of excited. He was like, good, I'm a stranger. They don't know who I am. They just kicked me out.
What if your kid plays a game you're not interested in?
Oh, yeah.
Or they're playing Minecraft and you are going to be so behind them. You've never played. First of all, kids, if they're up for it, love to be the teacher. So that could work. Right. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important not to force it. Also, not all parents have the skill set to play, and not all kids have the patience to teach their parents. So first, we got to be mindful of that. But I think there's another route, just having that relationship where talking about your day, like, did anything cool happen? And this is where it's important to know who their friends are. Like, did she pass her test today? We're going to develop those same kinds of relationships like inside the gaming space. Did Mini Pretzels, did he get the new skin in Fortnite or whatever their gamer tag is? And then this is where it's important, where you're paying attention and you're listening and you're being involved. One of the biggest issues we haven't mentioned yet is that a lot of parents use screen time as a digital babysitter, because parents are tired too. Our working parents, who are doing something all day long, and then they come home and then they need a break too. So the screen time has given us like a bit of a break where the kids are entertained, but then that has created these separate spheres of where we're not integrated as a family unit anymore. And that's when a lot of things that I think happen that we don't want to happen, So we have to be mindful of like our bandwidth to be able to engage, because once we start that relationship with our kids, we have to sustain it. Kids are going to know if you're just coming in to be that policing parent, or if you're just coming in to invade my privacy, And also, if you're okay with what your kid's doing and not knowing, that's fine too. You have to just accept the consequences that might come from that. You have to take that responsibility of like, my kid's a bully and he's cyberbullying, and you weren't there to like witness.
And let me just chime in that, of course, a parent can play a little bit, but also use it as a way that the kid is just having their entertainment time. I was just thinking of a good way if a parent hasn't traditionally been playing the games that they're very good at, the parent can surprise them with a new game so that they're both at the level playing. Think of a new game to play. And that then would create a username and whatnot. And then say, you know what? I'm curious about the game that you're doing. I know sometimes like emotional stuff happens, high adrenaline, mean talk. I want to help you if you need it. And if I could start knowing who you're playing with, that would be cool. If maybe we could look at their gamer tags.
I love that, Delaney. That's a beautiful thing. Something else that I think is really useful, because some kids might be very protective of their friend groups and their friends, right?
Yep.
They might not want
particularly older teens.
Yes. And so I think that the alternative then for parents is to then just have that relationship with your own kid. Be invested in the games that they're playing, you know, what's going on. If new skins are coming out, it doesn't take that long to just Google the latest things that are happening inside Fortnite or inside Roblox or inside Minecraft. And actually your kids know that. And then they would think you're kind of cool for knowing it too. Not realizing that Google is there. But I think also the key part is just making sure that your kiddo is aware of the tools to protect themselves, is aware of what to do if a situation approaches and happens. I do scenario-based training, and I think I developed that scenario-based training from my days of being like an RA in the dorms, like from undergrad. You know, I was an RA, and so we always did scenarios, right? And so
and in medicine, we always do case studies, which is by far the best way to learn.
The best way.
Exactly. So let's do some of your scenarios and let's do the mean language.
So I don't want to be too, presumptuous and, kind of categorizing people. But for my kind of sheltered kids, and I mean that like respectfully, kids who may have been our homeschool kids and, the kids who have not been out like and had like a lot of social interactions, that reality is harshest for them. To get like, and they're like, these kids are mean. And I'm like, it's sure, yes, they're mean, but it's such a normal thing. Now, what I want parents to know is that they can find those spaces, because all spaces are not like that. All kids are not talking like that and engaging like that. And in fact, I had committed myself, especially during quarantine, I'd send out some posts and some blasts. I'm like, hey, my kids have a very pro-social way of engaging and interacting with one another. They'll help their friends figure out Animal Crossing. They'll be patient with them. They're not going to make fun of them like if they don't have skins. So we were committed to that. And especially during quarantine, there were a lot of new families inside the gaming space because people had to figure out what to do when we were quarantined, right? And so there weren't that many safe landing spots. So I remember some kids, they were new to Fortnite, and then they just hear all this cussing and all this mean-spirited like engagement. And I'm sad to say that that's normal in a lot of spaces, but that's not the only way to engage. So what I've been committed to doing is like helping young folks develop this pro-social interaction and engagement. So I help them develop competitive language that's not harmful, that's not sexist, that's not homophobic or racist.
Can you give some examples of competitive language that doesn't have those other traits?
Absolutely. So I think we have the best model from traditional sports to make sense of it. Like our football players and our basketball players, they're interacting in real time with each other. They can't just be trash talk. I mean, they do, but they're also still saying good game, praising each other. I'm even thinking about the example of like, for instance, like Angel Reese, just praise Caitlin Clark, for being an amazing competitor. And I think that that's like the good model to see, good game is always good. And knowing when to say, I'm sorry, knowing when to say, hey, I shouldn't have done that. Hey, are you okay? And checking in like on folks. That's part of like that competitive spirit. And also like developing like pro-social like behaviors like inside games. At the core of games, it's already competitive. We don't have to add to that by adding the language, adding the toxicity. You don't have to engage in any of the trash talk.
I often have written about the third language. Like the reality is once they get onto these social media platforms or even texting with each other when they're in middle school, you feel cooler to use language that is prohibited. Even in many households where the language is very clean, they can do that.
Yeah.
And Kishonna, we show in a scene in Screenagers Under the Influence, like when we have young people and they're going to have their blow up and it's our work to stay calm, maybe say, I'm going to go get water on my face. That's our work. But they're going to express themselves at times. Whereas many people were raised like, wait, you're not respecting me. And we just fight back. And so as parents, bringing
That's
that
right.
down, having the
That's right.
conversations about, how can all of us, when we feel that anger, frustration, what do we do with it? As opposed to disallowing emotions and saying,
That's right.
emotions can't be that way. Let's do a scenario about what a kid could do if there's a lot of trash talking, but it's their friends on it. They could try to get the friends to play a different game that isn't as adrenaline producing. I don't know. What do you think?
That's right. So let's say we're in the thick of the scenario. There's a lot of cursing, a lot of trash talk, a lot of inappropriate like language and like phrasing, that's happening. And then you're just sitting there like gaming and you're witnessing and experiencing that, right? So I tell the kids, you can leave.
If it's not anything that's super drastic and terrible, honestly, I'll talk back. Kind of adds a little bit of competitiveness to the game. But there are times when people are saying stuff online and I'll just get on and be like, dude, what are you saying? This is just crazy.
You don't have to stay there. But if these are your friends and you want to stay, then maybe you could do like a bystander intervention, right? You can try to help calm it down or cool it down. And that's like redirect. So for instance, I remember in this one scenario, I had the young person say, hey, I'm looking for such and such weapon. Has anybody seen that? To try to just redirect the energy. Sometimes, depending on how heightened it is, sometimes just getting them refocused on the game helps. And that's all you need. And so that redirection energy is like really useful. Other times when it's like more inflammatory, some sexist or racist or, homophobic language. And then depending on how developed that kid is, we can develop like allies in the space. So I remember this one kid, people were using like the F word, the homophobic language, and he didn't want them to use it anymore. And I was like, you could just say, that's pretty offensive. I'd like for you to stop doing that. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, my bad. I didn't know. The other thing, whenever you're like, hey, can you stop? And then it escalates, right? And then sometimes whenever you insert yourself, that toxicity could then be directed to you. So one of the things that kid did, we were in the game, he had the Discord open. Somebody was using the N-word towards this kid in that space. He responded in the Discord, like, hey, y'all, we should probably do something about this because I don't want people like to be racist and to like use like this language. And then the friends are like, yeah, me either. So what they did, they just drowned out that racist conversation, flooding it with hyping their friend up, say, hey, Jamal, you're awesome. So they drowned out the racist conversation because they also I didn't want the kids to also be in harm's way for them to like receive like any kind of information. So they just focused on their friend who was being targeted like in that moment.
Yeah.
And what I also learned is that the majority of these kids, they have no idea what these words even mean. And I think that was like the saddest part. They didn't realize it was offensive. There was an example just the other day in one of the spaces that we were in. A kid used the S word to refer to some kids who were speaking Spanish. And then there was some redirection in there. It was like, hey, what does that word mean in a private chat? And the kid didn't even know that the word was used like in a derogatory way, to the Latinx people. And it was a Black kid that used it. And so in that moment, they said, that's like the equivalent of calling like a Black person the N-word. And then he's like, oh, I didn't know it was like that harsh. Like I would have never done it. And so I think a lot of times these kids just need to be equipped with the information to know. And I think one of the go-tos in the space usually that we do is like, we don't give them enough information because we think that they're too young and not ready for it. And I get it. But I'm like, the world is coming at them really fast. And we have to be committed to preparing them for the world.
Yeah. So kind of as they're hitting 5th, 6th grade, just like they can see porn at that time and even younger, it's starting earlier to say, let's talk about bad words. And a parent scenario might be,
there's a couple things that you could do. I think so many parents are accusatory and are like, what are you doing saying that language? I raised you better than that. Stop talking like that. First, you could sit and listen and wait for the cool down. And I think just having the information to not interrogate them later, but to kind of just talk with them, like say, hey, I heard, the voices got kind of like escalated. Are you okay? What made you use that language? Do you know what those words mean? Like, because a lot of times it's curse words. These are parents that didn't realize that their kids knew how to cuss and knew how to use the words right? Mm-hmm. Another thing is like, hey, where'd you learn all that from? And then sharing your own story of like the first time you cussed. So your kid knows that you went through the same thing. Because I think a lot of times parents have that realization like, oh my God, I didn't prepare my kids for this. And so it's like that self-reflection of like, I didn't do enough as a parent to keep them from doing that. Because it's about them, not about you. It's about them. So I had the parent like walk in and say, hey, I got your snack for you. Do you want some milk with that? Like a neutral interaction that has nothing to do with the game at all. And usually when the parent enters, they calm down immediately. And you don't have to talk about it at all. You don't have to like intervene, like get off that game. What you doing talking like that? Like, hey, dinner's ready. Don't forget to, clean the bathroom before you go to bed. Things like that. There are so many simple things that can be done that will keep that relationship intact. Because that's what I want. I want parents and kids to keep their relationships.
And from that place, they're going to feel safe to talk about what's really happening. And then you're also going to be talking about cussing and communication, because that is what they're happening. They'll just go undercover and you lose all this critical thinking, right, and all of that beautiful work that happens with their brilliantly developing brains at this point.
So I think that this is going to have to be one of those relationship building pieces. Mm-hmm. Parents need to know, what do you need inside this game? What do you need all this money for? And I think having that real conversation will be important, but also making sure that the kid is safe enough to be able to say, I just want the skins that come out. Because some kids are ashamed to say that, because they feel like that whenever they start talking like with their parents, their families, like devaluing that. And then so the kids are like ashamed.
Well, this has been wonderful, and I can't wait for our next conversation.
Absolutely, Delaney. This was fantastic. Thanks for letting me be a part.
Thanks for listening today. And please follow the Screenagers podcast. It's the same thing as subscribing. And rate and review it if you have a minute. And consider telling a friend about it. This really helps spread the word. We have show notes at screenagersmovie.com, where you can learn about our 3 Screenagers movies, sign up for my weekly free blog about parenting, find hundreds of past blogs called Tech Talk Tuesday, and tons of other resources. Meanwhile, we'd love to hear any ideas you have for future podcast episodes. Email me at delaney@screenagersmovie.com. This Screenagers podcast episode was produced by me, your host, Delaney Ruston, Lisa Tabb, Bridget McCarthy, and our sound editor was Alan Gofinski.